Welcome, everyone,
There
to the
you
final
go.
episode
Done.
of SEO for Bloggers for 2024. We're thrilled to have you with us as we close out the year on a high note and gear up for the successful 2025. Today, we're joined by our talented panelists, Casey Markey of MediaWise, Andrew Welder of NerdPress, and our very own Arsen Rabinovich of Top Hat Rank. Me, I'm Melissa Rice. You know this face already. Okay, together we'll be unpacking the latest Q4 algorithm updates and sharing practical SEO strategies and providing a clear vision of what's ahead for your blogs in the coming year. There's been so much, well, there is going to be so much opportunity on the horizon. I know some people have had some pain points this year, but whether you're recovering from the recent updates or riding the momentum of growth, good for you. We'll want to equip you with the tools and the confidence you'll need to thrive in the new year. So as a friendly reminder, at the end of this episode, we'll be holding the Q&A. To submit your questions, we just ask that you type the letter Q followed by your question. That way we can get you queued up and get them answered by the end. Let's kick this thing off, I guess. All right, Arsen, I'm going to you first. What specific differences are you seeing in this Q4 compared with previous updates? And I'll follow up after you answer that initial question because I've got to follow up.
Right. So we are seeing recoveries, not anything like super major, but a lot of blogs, and I visited with some actually yesterday, where content that was affected in the March update that hasn't been touched or improved is seeing recoveries. In some instances, we're seeing improvements to 200, 300 keywords per day. And that's when we're seeing improvements, that keywords moving into decent positions. It's a mixed bag. I'm sure Casey's seeing something maybe different or similar, but it's a mixed bag. We also have our clients who we've improved the website, we've improved the overall health of the website, we've improved page level signals. We're seeing improvements there too. So it's a positive thing. We're not seeing too many sites being actually affected negatively, but at least for now. So far, it's either a plateau or improvements from this.
Can you let us know how some of these bloggers saw growth during the time? I mean, like, what did they do to win?
Right. So, like I said, some cases nothing was done at all. And we can attribute that to Google testing different types of results. Google saying that we tried these types of posts. We've tried roundups instead of articles in one single item articles, or vice versa. And now in this update, we're making these changes and we're seeing these improvements. So it's hard for us to, at least right now, because we still haven't had enough time with it, to say like this specific thing works, right? At least for us right now, we're approaching it from a perspective of let's make the improvements across the board and be very much diligent with making sure that we're covering everything that needs to be covered, ruling out everything that we can possibly rule out, and then we're going to see results. So I can't really tell you we did this one specific thing and it worked, because we can't really at this point.
Sorry, guys. I know everybody was curious. Can't pinpoint it. Casey, second question. What is the best approach to recover content affected by the Google Core update?
Well, I was going to recommend annual sacrifice, but I've decided that we're going to go another route today, especially because, again, this is a friendly show here. But I want to start off by pasting over some resources here. Google is really clear that they have had their information, their recommendations on the core updates have not changed. And you can see that it's all the same old spill, high quality content, do and understand how to do a self-assessment. I'm provided both of those links there. Core updates are really all about Google trying to provide the best quality experience it can for users. Now, it's pretty hilarious, as I know many of you saw the Creator Summit that they had about a month and a half ago now. And there was a lot of angst, would be the word I would use, that came out of that, with Google specifically telling those in attendance attendees, creators, that I don't understand it. We looked at your sites. We don't understand what happened. We can't figure it out. It's pretty hilarious because, again, as Arsen said, there have been some recoveries where nothing has been done to the site. It has just been bounced back. And right, when you continue to add all of this machine learning into the algorithm, you're not going to be able to control all the inputs, as well as being able to understand and vary and query the outputs. So that's kind of what Google is doing. they're continuing to refine the input so that we can find out why we're having all these false positives. If you've got 50 bloggers that were invited and they're considered noticeable and very visible false positives, you can extrapolate that out and understand that there's probably 50,000 to 100,000 other sites out there that are in that same bubble. So in many cases, even though Google is saying, hey, we want you to do this, and we understand and we know what high quality content looks like, here they are publicly saying, we're getting it wrong, and we're still continuing to refine that so we can return the best possible results we can for our users. So, but as always, we want to go directly to the documentation that Google provides. The 2 resources I pasted over shows what Google expects to see in a highest meets needs site. And it also provides a list of assessment questions that all bloggers should be using to review. And they're questions that Arsen and I use when we do our own audits. We know those questions by heart. When I have an audit with someone and I'm grading a live recipe on their page, I'm using a lot of information, including those assessment questions, to provide you unvarnished feedback on what you did and did not do correctly on that recipe. And then we have to extrapolate that and take all those giveaways, all that feedback back, and apply it on a site-wide level. So my advice is definitely start with the 2 resources and go from there.
Okay. Then Casey, what changes do you see coming for Google in 2025? And how should anybody prepare?
Well, that's a good one here. And I'm going to go ahead and share another article from Google's CEO. How do you pronounce his last name? Is that Pichai? I always pronounce it Pichai. Sounds good.
Yeah.
So we'll just go ahead and do that. And I'll paste it over here. We'll just call him Sundar. That's always a nice Sundar, the Barbarian. One of my favorite shows. There we go. So this is a great resource here, and it exactly answers the question, what are we to expect from Google in 2025? And you're going to find that Sundar does a good job leading into what he expects Google to do. And he says, quote, buckle up, because if you loved AI before, you're going to love the 10 times more AI stuff that we're going to be pushing out in 2025. It's going to be AI overviews for everything, and you're going to love it. So if you're on the call, hey, everyone, just take a drink. Did you take a drink for that? Didn't do that.
All right.
If you're on the call and you're
Not
looking at what we're doing in 2025, you should just be leaning into, you'd be steering heavily into AI overviews. So that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a lot more of an increase in passage indexing. We're going to see a lot more of an emphasis on Google and returning information on conversational search. You're going to see the expansion of AI overviews. You're going to see that carousels are going to shrink. We're going to be showing less of those recipe carousels above the fold. My prediction is that web stories kaput. I suspect that you're not going to see web stories much at all, period, probably by the second quarter of 2025. Google didn't mention web stories one time. They even lowered their mentions of Discover by 50% in the most recent Q3 call to investors. So that says something. Maybe that's just not a concern for them. They're more interested in pushing resources to Google Lens, which is fascinating and fantastic for food bloggers specifically who are visual. Google Lens is certainly something you want to read up on, and we'll have more information on that, probably, in the future. Good times. But yeah. I would definitely look at that. I would buckle up. I would go ahead and lean into that. And when we're trying to think about how we want to hit these users, what you need to think clearly about is how users search on their phones with ChatGPT and Gemini, because we need to think more about FAQs. We need to answer the question more succinctly, and we need to only go into more detail when it makes sense. We just do not need to be writing these incredibly long recipe posts because your ad company told you that longer posts are better because we can stuff more ads into it. I can't tell you how many audits I have every week where we're still getting that as an actual recommendation from the ad companies. Please do not fall for that.
And we've been, sorry, I'm going to quickly cut in. We've been seeing this. Like if you look at the search results right now, like if you go and you search for even like a braised chicken recipe, you're going to see that the top ranking posts are all much shorter. They're you're not seeing ingredients and instructions as content on the page anymore. It's all in a recipe card.
Your longer is not necessarily better, so you have to look at it that way. Right. Now, you also have to understand that there also is a cognitive bias when we're looking at the search results now more than ever, because we're seeing all these large brands get returned at the top of the search results, and those large brands don't have to do the things that we smaller brands, especially those right here. I'm looking here at the bloggers I recognize, and there's dozens of you in that middle tier between 45 to 200,000 sessions a month. You can't do what you're seeing in the search results and be successful. You've got to put those ingredient photos. You've got to understand that column blocks are useful for step-by-step photos. You've got to understand that you have to show your expertise, and you have to include those recipe notes and recipe cards. That is the only way you're going to have any chance of competing with the big sites who can get away with murder, and that's not you. So the reason that we continue to do these recommendations, labeled ingredient photos, step-by-step photos, expert tips, FAQ blocks, is because we have the clarity information, or we have the heat maps that show that users are stopping and interacting with those elements on the page. And that's what we want. We want to increase the time on site as much as possible, because now we know, based upon the Google leak, what a surprise, it's actually a ranking factor. So we really have to work on making sure that we increase our time on site, that we really work on making sure that we're meeting the needs of users, and only detailed recipe posts do that. We just don't need to write a novel to present that information.
Arsen, Kate asked if you could expand on your last comment.
Oh yeah. So just look, it's there. You don't. It's not rocket science. Google some of your most competitive keywords, and just take a look what's living at the top. Casey linked to the guidelines from Google for the self-assessment. There's so much to be learned from that. There's so much gold in that, and I recommend everybody reads that. It's just Google has said the things that we're noticing. And again, if you search for something like a braised chicken recipe, you're going to see that every single result on that page is a little bit different. It's not the same type of recipe or very similar recipe from 10 different sites. They're all different. Look at those results, learn from them. Click into the first result, click into the second result. Notice the difference. Notice the difference with who's ranking at the top versus who's ranking towards the bottom of the page. And you're going to start noticing that Google is prioritizing or preferencing. I mean, there's also the human layer, but like preferencing like the uniqueness, a unique perspective on the recipe, not the same thing over and over from 10 different sites. The first result is Cooking Tasty or something like that from Victor. He talks about using proper braising cookware. The first thing that he's talking about there. He's providing a unique perspective. Learn from that. Take a look.
Andrew, what's the best way to figure out if a blogger was impacted by the recent algorithm changes? I mean, considering it overlapped with the Thanksgiving traffic, can you kind of elaborate for us how someone might figure that out?
Sure. I mean, Thanksgiving traffic generally is like builds, and then the day before Thanksgiving is like bonkers, right? Where everybody's scrambling to figure out a recipe, and then it kind of tapers off starting on Thursday morning. So you know that pattern's going to be there. So if your pattern doesn't match that, maybe that's a good sign. But more importantly, it probably makes sense to look at your year-over-year stats and look at how your site performed Thanksgiving time last year and see what the pattern was. And you can probably get a good idea there. And if you do see some anomalies, that's when you want to start drilling in and looking at individual URLs. You know, were there any specific posts that were year-end or Thanksgiving related that might not have performed as well? Because you know, as with all of these things, once you look at all the traffic combined, that's one picture, but you really have to drill down, especially because, you know, for most of you, a few posts are driving the majority of your traffic, right? So you really want to drill in and look at those posts.
Arsen, how can smaller sites recover from traffic and visibility losses, particularly when competing with these large-scale publishers and crazy AI-generated content?
Right. So, you know, Google is getting much better at pulling AI-generated content, and I'm seeing that over and over and over again. As far as smaller sites being able to compete, you're still able to compete. You just have to be much better. And again, keep in mind, as the ecosystem, as the search ecosystem changes, and more tools are introduced like AIOs, AI overviews, humans will change the way they interact and the way they engage with the platform. The way we search is going to change over time. We're going to adjust to it. So really having a proper content strategy from a perspective of it's not just you know, word plus recipe, right? Like chicken, braised chicken recipe, right? You have to provide something unique. You have to provide something that's going to make you stand out. Some way for you to establish expertise and show that you own this small domain. So not targeting queries that you can look at the results and it's like, I have no chance of being here, right? But maybe there's a variation of this keyword that I can start ranking for. Maybe I can provide a unique version of this braise. Maybe I can make it dairy free. Maybe I can make it gluten free, whichever way, and start building that authority and that trust around that topic. And the more of that you do, the more Google will see, oh, this blog does have a lot of braising recipes and there is some authority around this topic, and you'll slowly be able to. So you don't have to be like a giant site. You just need to show authority. And again, you can see this in search results. Google is not only throwing in like really big publications. Google will also throw in, like we saw for I think Venezuelan arepa recipe, we saw a Latin American internship program website ranking for on page 1. It's just like not even a recipe card on the page. So there is opportunities. You just have to be much smarter. And we're going to talk about long tail keywords a little later, but you have to be much smarter at selecting your topics.
Awesome. Can't say too much candy corn. What's going on over there? We got background noise. Sorry about that, guys. But moving on to Casey, the next question is for you. What are the first findings from the November update? And are there any new best practices to consider?
Well, the most recent update started on November 11th and completed about 24 days later on December the 5th. So it wasn't nearly as long as we thought. But per Google, quote, the update was designed to continue our work to improve the quality of our search results by showing more content that people find generally useful and less content that feels like it was made just to perform well on search, end quote. Good times, basically the same spiel that they've been saying for quite a while. I'm gonna paste that over for you guys so you can print that out and start throwing darts at it over the Christmas holiday. But basically the main findings have been, it was pretty muted. Overall, most of my colleagues thought it was very minor in comparison to past updates. That being said, the food and drink niche, this update was twice as volatile when compared to the August update data that we can see. And you can actually see this if you take a look at this graphic put together from SEMrush sensor volatility data. And I'm going to go ahead and paste that over. And that's a good way for you to kind of get an idea of how the niches individually shake out. And you can see what the volatility was for food and drink. Now, with these updates, what we're always seeing is that we have a lot of the clients who seem to be confused about whether they were hit by the update or whether they were benefited from the update. And the reason that is because of where Thanksgiving fell on the calendar this year. We had a lot of bloggers contact me saying, oh my gosh, I think I got some recovery. And we found out that it wasn't. It was just a seasonal increase. It was not a core update increase. And that's very easy to confuse. So I would just remind all of you attending today, go in and do a simple year-over-year review of your Google Search Console. You'll know very clearly where the seasonal drops and where the seasonal flows are so that you can make sure that, hey, no, unfortunately, this is just a regular seasonal uptick. This isn't necessarily anything because of the core update. Most bloggers who've been affected by the core update will tend to see those increases quickly. Very seldom do we see, okay, here's the last 4 days of the update, and all of a sudden you get an update there. You get an increase. Very seldom do we see that. So go in. I think Melissa could probably find and paste it over. You have the ability to do a traffic drop audit. We cover that in detail. Please do that every time you know the dates of these updates. We know again that this update started on November 11th. And we know again that it ended again on December the 5th. So use that information specifically to see if you see any noticeable ebbs and flows. And then, of course, take how late Thanksgiving was this year out of the equation and see what you see.
Right. Andrew, should the focus be on producing new content at this point or updating proven winners in Q4? And can you elaborate on why?
You sound so excited as you asked that question.
Well, because we'll go back and forth on this option.
I think, can you all say it with me? It depends.
Woo!
What? If you've got hundreds of posts and many of them aren't ranking or ranking well, you're probably going to get better ROI on your time and effort by working on improving those posts than by creating lots of new content. I feel like we've reached peak food content on the internet. So by creating more, all you're doing is diluting things more. That's my personal opinion. So, most sites have probably 80% of their traffic from 20% of their posts. So look at those other 80% and say, hey, can I do something with those to improve them? And in terms of the question that said, proven winners, we always say if it's a unicorn, if it's in the top 3, don't touch it. But if you can find those posts that are on page 2, ranking 10 to 20, those are the ones you can really get a bigger lift on, right? So, but if you're still starting out, you've only got 40 or 50 posts, maybe, you might want to be adding more content. So there, it depends.
I just want to set a reminder, guys. If you want to add a question that we can answer later, please put the letter Q ahead of it so I can star that. And then, of course, everybody, thumbs up the questions you'd really like to see answered so we can answer them in order of in demand. Andrew, a follow-up question for you. Are long tail keywords still effective, or are there better strategies to focus on for driving search engine traffic?
I'm glad you asked. So, so I think long tail keywords are probably more important than ever, actually. How many of us are going to rank for barbecue ribs? Not very many, right? So as we get more specific, as users are more sophisticated, as AI is helping drill down onto more search results that are more specific, I think those long tail, very specific posts that have specific ingredients, specific dietary needs, or whatever it is, right? Whatever, as you're more specific, you're going to help the search engines connect the people to what they are really looking for. So I think the trend is going to be more personalization in search in general. AI makes that a lot easier for Google and others. So to me, that screams long tail. And it really becomes about your niche and being more specific to your users, or for your users.
And I would just add very quickly onto that, the whole purpose, long tail might as well be colloquial for conversational. And that is where search is going, and search has been going for the last decade. Conversational search. You're pulling out your phones, you're asking them directions somewhere, you're asking them for your next, for a takeout recommendation, you're asking them, hey, Google, could you tell me the reviews on this horse bridle from, Smart Final or whatever it is, Smart Circle. That's where we're going, and those are the kind of queries conversationally that we have to optimize for. And so when we write a complete post, we want to write it in a colloquial, very, very conversational way so that it's easier for Google to pull that information out, which is literally how the AI overviews are being generated. That's the definition of passage indexing. So yes, long tail exists, but it's not really long tail. It's more conversational search these days.
Well, yeah, I've been finding, one of the challenges Google has always had is people put in very few words, right? So it's trying to figure out what their query intent is. So when somebody searches foaming hand soap, they don't know if you're trying to buy it or make it, or you have, you
learn about it, right?
Right. So, and I've found actually in my own usage, I'm using ChatGPT for search now that it can browse the web a lot more, because I have generally tricky problems I'm trying to get solved that there isn't necessarily one article for. So I'm having it do analysis. And what I've noticed in my own usage is when I go back to the search engine, I will say DuckDuckGo is my default instead of Google. But when I go back to the search engine, I'm finding I'm actually writing a full question now, but instead of just putting in a couple of keywords.
Right.
And I think I didn't deliberately try to change how I search. I just am finding it's becoming more conversational. And I think more and more people are likely to start doing that. There's probably gonna be more voice search. I just talked to somebody who has a conversation with ChatGPT every day on her commute.
Right.
So people are, the voice stuff is going to be happening much more as it becomes more conversational. So I think that all speaks to how it's just going to be a broader scope of searching now.
And it's just it's people adjusting to the platform, right? It's people adjusting how they retrieve information, and that discovery journey is now going to be shortened, where you don't have to go query by query by query. And I talk about this when I say, like, I'm trying to find a bike for my kid. Usually that would be multiple queries. What's the best bike for my kid based on his parameters? Where can I find this bike? Reading reviews, finding deals. Who can now you can load that entire process into ChatGPT or an answer engine and say, I'm looking for a bike for my kid. He's this tall. He has this kind of inseam. He's an aggressive rider. Blah 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 blah. Give me the results where I can buy them based on reviews and best deals, right? And now you have all of this just provided to you. You don't have to spend 40 minutes to an hour.
I know. What are we going to do with all that extra time?
We're going
More candy corn.
We're going to use
There
that time and go back and edit our old posts, of course.
Right.
Good one, Andrew. Casey, you have any insight on how to remove a site-wide classifier? Are there specific steps or guidance you could share with us?
Well, I just pasted in basically what Google specifically says, which is, of course, the long, useless information that they always provide, which is to make sure that you're focusing on high quality, diverse content, blah, 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 that reflects the full range of topics, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, respectfully, the only way that you can get a site-wide classifier removed these days specifically is to make sure that your site is so embarrassingly awesome that Google's embarrassed not to rank it. Right. To do that, that means you have to really go in and look at the content, look at the user experience, look and fix all technical issues. Make sure that you have something that Google views is worthy of indexing. I cannot tell you how many sites have come to us in the last 6 months. We've seen these site-wide suppressions going on, and they've just taken bad advice, or they have ads every 2 paragraphs, or they're running intrusive interstitials which pop up on the first click from Google and cover the entire screen, or they have allowed media buying to take over their jump buttons and jump everyone to another link that they have to click to continue to get to the recipe card, or they are writing a post that has every iteration possible for lamb mutton when that is not necessarily what the user is looking for. You have to understand that it has never been harder to be a food and lifestyle creator than it is now. We do not need another sugar cookie recipe. We do not need another lamb shanks recipe. So unless your recipe is so ridiculously awesome that it has a unique twist, it's going to be very hard for especially newer content like that to get through the noise and rank. We've already covered how important conversational search is. If you haven't gone in and had a blog survey of your users to find out actually what they want, that's something that we recommend twice a year. But to get a site-wide classifier off when it is done, and by the way, it's incredibly hard, is you have to literally change everything you're doing. When bloggers come to me and they're like, man, Casey, I got hit by the helpful content update, and then I got hit again in March, and my goodness, here it is August, and now the November update is completed, and I still haven't recovered. Well, most likely it's not a mistake. When we look and we do the site, we see that they've got 1,100 posts and only 150 of those posts are actually generating traffic, or we've got 5 fruit salads when Google's never going to rank more than 2, if that, and you've linked by easy fruit salad for every one of those 5, therefore destroying your internal linking and cannibalizing your reach. There are just many, many examples of like that over thousands and thousands of queries where what you know just is not what you need to know to get your site moving. So please, we try to give you as much free information as we can, but really that's the difference between treating your blog as a business and treating your blog as a hobby. Those that treat their blog as a business, they literally farm out everything. They're having Andrew do their technical support. They're working with Ashley and doing content briefs and optimization. Maybe they're going and working with Arson or myself and having a full technical and a content audit.
Right.
I believe that we absolutely have to do those things. There was this talk recently about how SEO audits are useless, and I just had to laugh my ass off about that because I have a whole list of these incredible table filled with free gifts I get everywhere from bloggers who bought second homes or put their children through college or done other things that have changed their bottom line stack in life. And that's our goal here. We don't do it because we really want to see ourselves in lights. We do it because we're trying to change the lives and the trajectories of the bloggers, especially everyone who's visited and invested their time today. We're giving you our best to guess. And that's our goal.
For Andrew's cool hat. That's what I do it.
And we do it for Andrew's hat too. So
right.
there too.
I want to add to that. So like there's certain like old school SEO practice, like I'm still seeing over optimization. And like we've been, I think our first episode in 2019, we talked, and this was like after the November 2019 update where a lot of bloggers were affected. If you've been around this long enough to remember, we've been talking about we've been saying don't stuff your headings. We've been saying this. Casey and I and Andrew have repeated this over and over and over again. And I still see it. Arsenal was affected in March. I look at the post and just like simple assessment. And oh my God, like, why are you doing this? We've told you not to chase that green light in Yoast. Linking out willy-nilly, just because you have a post that's performing very well, you don't need to link that post to every other post on your website. You're creating confusing contextual signals. All of these things are bad. Stop doing them. And little by little, you're going to notice that there's improvements, because the way the helpful content system works is it tries to understand manipulative SEO practices. And as soon as it understands it, it uses AI to learn that. And then it feeds the machine learning process, which then teaches the classifiers that, hey, everyone who's doing this, we need to classify them, right? So you have to start, and I put this in the comments, we have to optimize for the user. We have to become an answer engine, right? We have to provide uniqueness. We have to stop following a specific formula that everybody else is following, because that's a footprint and that machine learning process is going to learn from it. Also, Casey's been saying this over and over, the user testing, the really understanding how to keep a user on your site. We haven't talked about this, Casey. We haven't talked about the human layer, right? How Google learns from engagement with the search results. How when people click on the first result and then bounce back, and then Google learns and moves things around. You want to keep the user on your site. You want to sell your post right away. Casey says this all the time. Sell them on the reason why they should be here. Jump to recipe button, that should be prominent. It shouldn't be buried. You want that engagement on your page. Google sees when somebody clicks on your site and then clicks back. And over time, you're going to start noticing that those signals your posts are going to start slowly aging out of those positions. Go ahead, Casey.
Yeah, and that concept that Arsen is talking about is called pogo sticking.
Right.
And pogo sticking is a known behavior that Google tracks, that they track at scale. If I've got a site and I'm looking for holiday fruitcake, homemade fruitcake, and I go through 3 recipes and I don't find what I want on the first 2, guess what? And I clicked on the carousel,
right,
you're going to be dropped to the 2nd or 3rd level of the carousel very quickly.
And Google notices how you refine your query also. You didn't see anything, and that's why one of the main reasons we're seeing Reddit come up closer at the top of the results, right? Because people searched for potato soup recipes, saw that all 10 are creamy potato soups. That's not what I'm looking for. So I'm going to either refine my search. By the way, little secret sauce. Mm-hmm. Look at the bottom of the search result page. Look at the other queries that Google is populating.
The related searches.
Exactly. That's going to kind of give you an understanding what people are not finding there. That's how you become a little bit unique. But keeping in mind that even like the pre-click data, you're ranking, you're in the top 3 positions, you're holding good positions, but your click-through rates are declining. Google will learn from that. You're not getting clicks. Your title, your meta, whatever the reason, you have poor star ratings. You're not getting the clicks. You're going to start seeing that your positions are starting to slide. That human layer is so strong.
It's totally okay. Use Clarity. Use heat map tools. What's the one that we used to use? Crazy Egg. Crazy Egg is still a fantastic platform. You can go in and have them record. Hotjar. Hotjar is still very popular. You can go in and buy credits on Hotjar, and it will literally go in and take 1,000 sessions from your Google Analytics and provide you very quick information. And then it'll even use AI to pull all the characteristics together. Here's how many of those people use the jump to recipe button. Here's how many of those people got jumped down to that arrival unit, good old Mediavine, taking over your jump to recipe button, got jumped down to that arrival unit and immediately left the page. There's a lot of them, okay? It also, there's things like print paths. We love print paths actually, but won't really get into that today, but we'll talk a little bit about that. But there's lots of things that you can do to make your pages more sticky, and that's our goal. What is it about my recipe that's better than the millions of others out there? Am I getting people on my page and keeping there because my information is useful? Or am I taking I'm going to make this page so incredibly long and difficult, I'm going to trap them so that way I can skew my RPMs a little bit. And trust me, there's plenty of bloggers who do that and it's not successful. And we want to try to push back against that as much as we can.
I think one of the metrics that would be really good for everybody to be watching in their analytics is session time or time bounce rate. Everybody focuses on page views and sessions, right? And that's because ad revenue is focused on that. And you're looking at how many people, but that's quantity, not quality. And as we go forward, it's really going to be about quality of the visit. all this stuff with AI is already going to hopefully be pre-screening people. So there's going to be a lot less of users clicking through, seeing that post isn't what they want and bouncing back, right? All that back and forth for users. That's what Google wants to get rid of. And AI can help that. And then if they get to the right post, they're going to spend time on your post and spend more time. So to reiterate everything that Casey and Arsen are saying, I think to me, that's the focus of 2025 is how can you really provide value for the people who do get to your site and keep them around and get them into your orbit and then have them coming back.
I'm going to add two points to this. The first thing is the 100% right. You want to effectively be able to predict why the user is there and what they need to learn, and the primary focus of why they're there. So they're there for the recipe. You want to give them that. You want to provide a unique perspective, but you also want to think next steps, right? And just going beyond how to serve, how to store, how to reheat. All of that's the basics. That's related to the topic that they're there for, right? And a lot of times I'm seeing this again in search results. It's a unique recipe like Venezuelan arepas. Include a link. Like here's a brief history where you can learn more about what, why they're called this and all of that. You don't have to write that content on your site, but you can provide those next steps. Those are all positive signals. And I forgot what the second thing I was going to say, but I'll remember later.
And I'll just add, we've got, I know we need to move on here. Again, we've got plenty of examples here in the chat, and we appreciate you bloggers who've gone in and said how, again, there are many success stories. There's hundreds of success stories on this call right here in this chat. Right. I always get emails from bloggers who are like, I'm so thankful for this, and I can't believe my traffic is up 400% year over year, or I've now, because we're doing so well, my husband has quit his job and now he's helping with my business. That's our goal for every blogger. I say this, and I hope everyone on the call who's had an audit can testify to this. I tell them, I want my audit to be the greatest investment you've ever made, period. That's the goal. My goal is for Rehab me to put me on your Christmas card list, to send me cookies, to say in a year and a half, hey,
candy corn.
To say, hey, this is where things change for me. And we do that. That's why we do the webinars for free. And we do all this stuff is for you to have not only the best information, but the correct information, because you're just not going to get that everywhere else.
I remembered my second point. Sorry. So that user signal, the user behavior, those signals are so important that we are changing our products because we can look back at the data and we can see that, hey, these posts were getting really, and even in the Google leaks, Casey, the language was it wasn't clicks, it was last meaningful click, right? In that API leak, the documentation, it was last meaningful click. The click needs to be meaningful. That's what they're looking for. It doesn't matter if there was 10 clicks, 100,000 clicks, or 1 click, as long as they're meaningful. We've changed our audits. We've changed our the way we monitor content performance to now look at pre-click and post-click data, to look at click-through rates, to look at dwell times, to look at why we're seeing a decline in click-throughs or clicks, but we're retaining good positions and good impressions. All of that information is super important for you to understand, so you can make adjustments before your posts start to decline.
Okay. I'm going to move forward. Arsen, we've spoken about users. We've spoken about content. What can publishers do? How do you recommend showcasing EEAT on a food blog if bloggers don't have formal credentials but rely on their years of cooking and recipe testing?
Just that, absolutely. Talk about that, right? But you still want to show that there's some kind of if you've been doing this for a while, there's probably some kind of recognition. You were on some podcast, you were on some interview, you've contributed content to other publications, you've worked with brands. All of those are credentials. Those should be listed on your about page. Just having your sidebar little about photo and the little blurb, that's not enough. That's never enough. Your content, your content should have a byline. That byline should link not to your archive where you're showing all of the posts that you wrote. That should link to your about page. Your about page should have the proper markup on it, telling Google that, hey, this is an about page about this person and all of the places that I'm linking to, where I went to school, where I was interviewed, where I've contributed content to. All of that should be linked out and in the same as. You want to connect. You're doing this to connect entities for Google to understand you are who you are. That's why you want to link to your socials. And on your social, you should have information about you being a food blogger. The more of those connectors you create around the web for yourself, the more you put yourself out there, the easier you're going to start seeing. You're going to have this blossoming effect. There's going to be more trust in your content. Now, At the same time, what we're noticing and what we've seen from Google and what we've seen in Google's the self-assessment stuff, there's a lot of emphasis on the quality of the content and the trust in the content. So if you're writing about a topic that you haven't covered before, or it's a recipe that's not something that's like, you traditionally write about, American food, and now you're writing about Thai cuisine, right? You want an opening paragraph explaining why people should trust you. This is a dish that I've made a gazillion times. I grew up with a Thai roommate, whatever. Present that in the first paragraph. Tell them why they should listen to you about this, right? A lot of times for travel bloggers, we're seeing like you're updating your content, you're changing your about date. Create a little blurb, what you're updating at the top of the post, why this content was updated. We updated this content to adjust if this is itinerary for a trip, to adjust for road closures, or there's a new toll or whatever, right? Give them that. All of that is super, super important to showcase expertise and trust. We want to continue doing that.
Yeah, more information. Okay, Casey, do you know how Google will address the AI generated content in SERPs moving forward, and what strategies bloggers can use to stay competitive?
So the first thing is to understand Google's stance on AI, and I've pasted over the full guidelines so that anyone who's interested can read those. And I urge all of you to do just that. Google is not against AI content. Google believes that content should be high quality and highest meets needs, and AI is a great way to do that. You just has to be good. You just can't use AI content to publish shitty content and expect to be successful. They're interested in making sure that the content that you publish has value. A lot of people take shortcuts with AI, or they don't necessarily set up AI correctly by going into ChatGPT. Now, I'm going to go ahead and paste over some information here, and I think it's going to be very helpful for you. And if it's not, then you can lie to me and say it is. So what it is the thing about AI specifically is that you can use AI to write your recipes. You can use AI to write detailed guides, treatises, whatever you want to do, but you have to set it up correctly. So what I've done here is I've provided a link to a list of known, extremely terrible AI words that are still generated in most responses that you can go ahead and have removed from all of your replies. And this is fascinating. This is a great way for you to immediately 100% improve your outputs on ChatGPT, Gemini, anywhere else, especially ChatGPT, if you're setting up a custom engine like you should be doing. And this will provide you a way, it will go a long way in humanizing your content, making sure that the content reads like a real person wrote it. No one says, but therefore, or hereto more, or remember to do that, or various words like here that you'll find over and over again. My son Blake is a junior in college right now, and he has used ChatGPT to just revolutionize his ability to get through his classes. But he did it after I trained him for a couple hours on how to set it up correctly. Once he was able to do that, it was like taking the parking brakes off. He was able to put in his notes, have full summaries of his lectures. He was actually able to upload custom words. I had him upload his last 5 or 6 essays so that ChatGPT could learn what his writing style was. And then it spat out all of the answers that he needed in the future, like he wrote them. Saves him a ton of time. And that's what I do. I hardly ever write anything 100% myself. I have a custom ChatGPT that's set up that I'm continuing to train so that I can go ahead and have that export out information to save me what is my most valuable resource, my time. And I would urge all of you to do the same thing. But yes, ChatGPT is something that you should use. AI is something you've got to lean heavily into. And the bloggers who are able to do that effectively are the ones that are going to have the most success in 2025.
Really cool thing to do, especially if you want to check, because Google is against clickbait titles, and it's a part of the classifier. And if you really want to check, ChatGPT does a really good job. You can easily ask ChatGPT, can extract all of your page titles, post titles, and you can say, hey, are any of these clickbait? And it does I've tested it. It does a really, really good job. Are any of these clickbait, according to Google? It does a really good job at identifying them and telling you why.
I was disappointed to see that Moist was on the list, though. Terrible.
I think it's important to take this list with a grain of salt. I mean, the word also is there, and wall, and unless. So
I use the word therefore. Am I?
A lot of people do that.
Are you a robot?
I don't know. But I second what Casey said. My son is 13 years old, and I've taught him how to use ChatGPT. And when he really needs some support in really looking into anything, I'm like, this is how you use it. And it's never too early, I feel like.
Oh yeah, there is too early.
No, he's monitored on my account, but my point is, I tell him college level thinking.
Right.
All right, Arsen, this is going to be the last question until we move into our Q&A. But for sites seeing traffic decreases year over year, what's the number one thing they should focus on in 2025 to bounce back?
Okay, so I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that you should focus on understanding why you're losing traffic year over year. I think that's very important because I'm seeing people make the same mistakes over and over and over again, and it's you really have to evaluate your content. You have to understand which content is not performing and why. And it could be not because you're doing something wrong. It could be just the environment, the ecosystem has changed, and Google just does not want this type of content. So if you continue to produce that, or you continue to rely on like what feels good from a content or topic identification perspective and how you're going to approach writing the content, kind of like just like blindly working without really understanding what's happening out there, you're going to continue seeing these declines. Also, sites with a lot of content or anything that's a decent amount of content, if you're not paying attention to your best performers, or how like the balance of like, hey, I have hundreds of posts, how are they doing for me? What's happening? I'd rather have, and Casey, if correct me if I'm wrong, I'd rather have a smaller website where majority of the content was less pages, where majority of the content is doing well and is really active and it's really concise and I'm really focused around specific topics and they have good structure and organization, than a giant 3,000 page website where only maybe 300 of those are doing anything for me.
Again, that's the best, literally, that is the best statement that you guys are ever going to have as a takeaway today. That the days of your site is not a book where you need to keep adding pages to the book over and over again. That's going to hurt you. You have to think lean and mean. It's just like in our content garden example that we've used as a metaphor for years. Everything that's generating traffic, those are your flowers. Everything that's generating no traffic, those are your weeds. Just like in a real garden, if you do not pull those weeds, they will strangle the resources that are allocated for the flowers. So you're either going to turn those weeds into flowers, or you're going to start pulling those weeds so that the flowers have plenty of room to grow. And that's the exact way to approach content auditing. It's okay. You don't need all that content. If you're not sure what to do with it, just no index it. Come back to it later. Google is totally 100% fine with that. We no index something. We've immediately removed it from algorithmic consideration. We've removed it from any sort of a site-wide filter. That is going to provide an ability for Google to understand and find and assess your site based upon the now live content that is a lot easier for it to find and crawl.
And when you know index stuff, you don't have to worry about updating internal links. Google will still crawl through those pages, just not going to index them. They're not going to be considered for indexing. So it is from a tactic perspective very smart to do this. But again, keeping an eye, and it's not just, again, don't get focused on the word traffic. It's meaningful traffic. Because if a post is getting clicks, but those clicks are doing nothing, they're just bouncing back, those are not quality clicks. That post is in trouble.
All right. I really like that garden metaphor, Casey. It's for a brain like mine, I like that. Pull the weeds. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So just and again, just kind of adding to what Arsen said here. We're gonna keep Melissa on the call as long as possible. AI is not something to be feared. Okay, I know a lot of you might be with Raptive. Raptive, unfortunately, has started a new trend where when they're onboarding new bloggers, they immediately block all the AI bots for you. I've had this happen multiple times to bloggers over the last 90 days. They are not communicating. Oh, hey, by the way, thanks for joining Raptive. We've uploaded a robots.txt file for you, and we're blocking all these AI bots. Absolutely terrible approach. We do not want to do that. We absolutely don't want to block Google Extended, which is an option in there too. Google Extended will tank you. That means you absolutely will not qualify for AI overviews or anything else. But if you want to block AI bots, you better have a really good reason, because there are bots out there that are crawling all of your content that is not even on that robots file. That is not remotely going to be reliable for you. So if you wanted to try to 100% block all the bots, there's a whole list of about 120 that I'm happy to send you. But again, it would do you no good, because they have that information, and that information is going to help you build more traffic, especially with Google leaning in heavily in 2025. And, with now we just had the announcement that there's an option with Gemini that they can actually go over and pull information from ChatGPT now if you're not pleased with the response. So we really want to make sure that we're not blocking those AI bots. If your goal is to make this a business and not a hobby, I get that a lot of creators feel that they should be remunerated for this. I get it. I agree. Blocking the AI bots is not going to do it. So find another way.
Embrace it. All right, here we go. Are we ready?
Ooh, that's fancy.
All right.
That is really nice.
We're keeping it up, you know. I'm gonna sift these as the most upliked. Let's see. Going with making sure I'm getting everybody in here. We've got one more to add. Starting with Tammy's question. Tammy, you're always at the top. I just want to say you've got good questions.
Good questions, Tammy.
Yeah. Tammy asks, are you saying that if I want to write my own content rather than using AI, I will be at a disadvantage?
No, that's not what we're saying.
No,
Okay.
and I replied to that directly into the chat.
Okay.
I'm just saying that you want to have more time with your family. AI is the way to go. You can automate a lot of your tasks. You can do a lot of things faster. I'm sure you have a system. Imagine cutting that system in half by automating some of the elements. You could do that. You just have to go and play around with AI a little bit.
All right, very good. Next question from Andrea. She asks, what do you think of the Mediavine Big Scoots companionship? Are there any cons, guys? What are we thinking? A lot of people are.
I'm guessing I should take this one. So I don't know of any cons right now. So far, it's in its infancy, and what it really means at the moment is if you sign up for this hosting is that you're going to get Big Scoot's version of Cloudflare Enterprise from them. So like if you're with NerdPress, we're already providing Cloudflare Enterprise. You're getting the benefits of the added security, the HTML caching, the various performance benefits of Cloudflare Polish. We've actually got a couple features that they don't have, like Argo. Over time, however, and I've talked with Eric at Mediavine directly about this, their plan is to add more features at the edge at Cloudflare that do give you some advantages. So they're starting with some cookie stuff. I mean, this is all about the third-party cookies going away, right? So they're looking at Cloudflare Workers, which is just basically little scripts, to be able to set cookies and do some of that with that. They have a long roadmap. Apparently, I'm not privy to all of it, but I've seen some high-level conversations about it. I think over time they're looking at doing some cool ad tech stuff, which should be beneficial. And I'm also talking to them about maybe getting that into NerdPress's Cloudflare Enterprise. So at the moment, I'd see if you're with NerdPress, I don't see any benefit to moving at the moment. And we're already talking with Jordan and Eric at Mediavine about how we can get those features in as they roll them out. And if at some point we find that it's more beneficial for you to be on the Big Scoots Cloudflare Enterprise for any reason, we'll be upfront about that. So I don't think there's an urgency to move. If you don't have CDN HTML caching of Cloudflare Enterprise of some kind right now, I think it would be a better move. And we'll see what they're actually able to roll out in terms of benefit. I'm guessing they'll be doing some marketing out there to talk about what the benefits are. I have seen also, if you're under 50,000 page views a month, they now have a Journey version of that, which is I think $29.99 a month. So if your traffic's below 50,000 and you're striving for Journey or just on Journey and not on Mediavine, you may actually save money by moving to that plan. So that's something to consider. But in terms of cons, I think the only con would be if you don't want to be with Big Scoots for some reason.
Okay.
Garrett,
Garrett asked how to contact Arsen. Garrett, I'm going to drop his email in here just in case anybody wants to reach out for services and consultation. Okay, next question. Let's see. Dave asks, are there resources to learn best practices when using ChatGPT or other AI? Casey, I'm assuming you might be the person to ask for this.
Well, we had a webinar. Didn't we do a webinar on AI and ChatGPT? So let's share that. Let's share that first, and then yeah, feel free to we'll drop some resources in the recap. Yeah, we'll drop some resources in the recap.
I dropped a link in the chat already. OpenAI has a really nice article on prompt engineering best practices for ChatGPT. So that's a really good overview. I think links aren't working in the chat, but if you just go to help.openai.com and search prompt engineering best practices, that'll come up.
Let's see. Here we go. Gigi asks, how will I know if my site is blocking AI bots?
You would go to /robots.txt. /robots.txt. That would be in your robots file. That's good first place to look.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's go back up to a couple questions that we got at the beginning. Jennifer asks, so should the smaller blogs keep the ingredients and steps in their post? I think we covered a little bit of this.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
You want to put forth the best recipe you can. The good recipes, the best recipes are the ones that are complete. You don't want to have again, we just don't want to write a novel. We don't need to write a full treatise on the histories of pudding from the French Napoleonic era. We just need to get into the pudding recipe and the tips to make it best from start to finish.
I have a little bit of a different viewpoint on this, and just
he does. I don't agree with it.
I'm looking at what's surfacing. So and again, this is not something that we're recommending. This is just something that I'm seeing. There's not enough data for us to recommend this right now. But if we look at things and we look at things from just a bird's eye view, right, and we're looking at it from a perspective of unless there's a significant difference in what you're providing from a context and content perspective in your list of ingredients from what you've listed inside of your recipe card, there's really no need to double up on that content on the page.
Well, first of all, that if you're doing that, you're doing it wrong.
Right. But
we don't list ingredients in a recipe post. We explain specific ingredients, and that's what I want people to understand. Right. If all you're doing is pasting your ingredients from your recipe card to your post, you're doing it absolutely 100% incorrectly. We want to show our expertise, and we show our expertise by providing important information on specific, not all ingredients. Right. So if anyone would like to see, I'm happy to include an example of a high quality post that does that. But I mean, there are plenty of people in this chat who are doing exactly that incorrectly, and they can share those examples. But we do not provide a whole list of ingredients in a post ever. No one needs to know that you have sugar and vanilla unless you're using some strange or weird variant for sugar and vanilla. Your goal on the ingredients is to show expertise, and we do that by having a nice labeled photo so that people can casually go through and pull out the ingredients. But then you use the ingredients section in the post to show your expertise. Here is, for example, this is the cut of meat I'm using, and I recommend this, this, and this specifically when I'm looking for this cut of meat. Or, by the way, here is a specific brand of sugar I recommend because I find that it works best because of this inflection point. That's how we use ingredient information in recipe posts. We do not use them as a way for us to just paste verbatim the ingredients and quantities from the recipe card to the post.
Google continuously says this. If you read the documentation that Casey linked to earlier, Google talks about providing a unique perspective around the topic from an expert view. So the same goes for instructions, step-by-step instructions. You're already providing those inside your recipe card, unless there's something unique and a unique perspective or something that you want to showcase or suggest or for them to do that's not listed in the step-by-step instructions. There's really, and again, I'm saying this based on observations, there's really no need to double up on that content, right? Now, you can have those headings and those sections within the post, absolutely. But if it's very similar, I'm not talking about copy paste. If it's just very, very similar, that doesn't make sense. You're telling the user to go down to the recipe card anyways.
Okay, we've got one long question, and then I think we've got to wrap up. But I'm gonna let you guys go for this one. Mary Ann, rather. I'm seeing queries for extremely high volume general recipe queries in GSC that show lots of impressions and clicks, but I never see my links and results when I Google those queries. Is this an indication of Google using personalization for huge volume keywords like that? Ahrefs also never shows my site for those queries, but the traffic is there.
It could be a combination of things. It could be the fact that these are in search features that you just don't see because you're not triggering them, depending upon if you're on desktop or mobile. These could also be LLM queries. This could literally be AI overviews that you're now starting to see with regards to the long tail keywords. We're seeing more AI overview information in Google Search Console every day, and it will be double, if not triple, what it is now, probably by the middle of the first quarter of 2025. So it is probably there, and you're probably just not seeing it. And yes, everything is 100% personalized these days.
Right.
So it would be very hard for you to replicate those searches at your end without
unless you go in and
doing
try
crazy things.
integration, right?
Exactly.
It could be a lot of, I mean, Casey, it could be Google testing different pages on the website. It could be for like a very popular query. It could be enough. It would ranking in the top 3 spots for a high volume query, even for one day, for a site that doesn't usually get a lot of traffic, will create that spike. Absolutely. And Google will test, and we see this all the time. Google will test different pages for maybe a day or 2 on the search result, and you'll see these spikes. It could be a lot of stuff. It could be Google just being weird also. So.
Could also be Discover.
Discover would show in Discover traffic.
Well, not anymore. Discover is now literally showing more and more in the regular organic. That's why you never see any web stories in Discover. They're all in the regular organic listings anymore. Web stories are just not reported in Discover at all anymore in the tab. Discover literally now is almost 99% of just regular article pages. So good times.
All right. Ending notes. Here we are. We've come to the very end. Casey will be hosting.
What did we learn?
Yeah. Casey's really going to be hosting SEO 12 Days of Christmas. I know he name dropped that earlier in the episode, but it'll be in partnership with Tastemaker Talk next week. Casey, please elaborate. Where can people find you? I know you've got a link to share. What are the deets?
Yeah, so I'm excited to do this next Wednesday. This is going to go into a deep dive in a lot of the issues that we talked about today, but basically 12 days of SEO. There's going to be a lot of funny gifts there. There's lots of nostalgia references to Christmas movies. We're going to try to make it as interesting as possible. It'll be no more than an hour of your time, but I spent a lot of time on this. It's going to be very, very good. I'm going to cover a lot of advanced techniques there. We're going to talk literally more in detail about things like print pass. We're going to talk about things that we definitely don't want to do with your ad company. We're going to talk about how to best track AI overviews and visibility. It's all over that. There's going to be a different priority for each of the 12 days of Christmas. So I definitely urge all of you to go over there. It's free. I can assure you it will be worth your time, guaranteed. So definitely check that out, and hopefully I'll see most of you next Wednesday.
Yeah, or else. No, I'm kidding. Okay. As usual, guys, we're going to have the recap on our blog in about a week. And this recording is going to be right on YouTube right after this. So
right away.
The first half.
No editing.
No editing. I mean, watch when you can. But yeah, we'll have an email blast going out to our subscribers to let you know when the recap is live on our blog. So thank you again for joining us. I know this year was highs and lows, but next year we've got our fingers crossed. I'm going to go ahead and ask the panelists to just stick around for a minute. I'll mute your mics. We're going to let these local recordings load up so everybody has the best quality on this recap. Everybody, thank you so much.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy New Year.
You're the best. We appreciate you. Bye.